Hi there, Good Word fam. It's Tisha Lewis, and this is The Good Word. Thank you so much for watching us. Next to me is a familiar face on the Good Word series, Monica Gary. Monica, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Tisha.
So just to refresh everyone's memory, Monica, you've been on The Good Word. You are a former adult dancer, exotic dancer, turned pastor, turned politician, elected leader. So you've had quite the trajectory.
Yes, I think you could say that.
And now we're sitting down next to you because you've made headlines for a very different reason. You were charged with domestic violence and made headlines for that. I know it's a very difficult topic, but we wanted to talk to you about it and hear your side of the story. So tell us exactly what happened.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for reaching out and allowing me to have this conversation. I think it's really important. So I'll talk about what actually happened, and then we can get some more into this and my thoughts about the larger situation and what we're dealing with here. I have a colorful history, as you sort of put it, and outside of what I went through with that job and working in the clubs, you don't end up there for no reason. Usually you've gone through some things, right? I had a lot of trauma at home. I had a son very young. I lived in a neighborhood where I saw a lot of violence. I don't know that I shared this with you previously, but I hope this is not too heavy, but I saw a woman stabbed 30 times. I was held at gunpoint and robbed with my son in the stroller. And so those things obviously create a lot of trauma. And unfortunately, a lot of that trauma, not just from that situation, but a previous relationship where I was abused very badly. I had been beaten, I had been strangled, some pretty horrific things, as you can imagine. Those things were not dealt with adequately. And it became very easy for me when I got elected to this position, to throw myself into work. And I love serving. And I got to serve. I'm getting to build schools and fix roads and all these wonderful things for people. But I neglected myself. And that's my full responsibility. I could have, and I should have gotten help to process some of these things I'm dealing with a long time ago. And so the headlines, which I would say, I think you hear this term fake news a lot. I think this would actually be a really good example. There was no alcohol issue. I actually had not been drinking, but hours prior, there was no sobriety tests, no concern about that when the police were called. I didn't hurt anyone. No one was hurt physically. I would say that because of the way I interacted with my husband, it was an argument, and I yelled a lot. And I went through, I recall, a list of things that I was still hurting from about our relationship. And I just remember standing in the hallway and saying, "You did this, how dare you? You did this, how dare you?" And there's so much bitterness that can build up inside of us when we're already struggling with traumas like I've mentioned just a moment ago. And then you're in a relationship and trying to make that work and having, difficulties there. And it just snowballs. And so what happened was one of my children called the police, and they showed up, and we had those conversations, and I told them what happened. I was allowed to, stay at my house afterwards. There was no booking. There was none of that. There was no real concern for safety of the children. Again, no sobriety tests, anything like that. You can hear a lot of things in the headlines, and they have to sell papers. I get it, but it's not always accurate. And I do appreciate you allowing me to share this information. And it's been very peaceful since, and I'm getting help that I do need and should have gotten a while ago.
So what did happen, though, is that the police came, and obviously you're facing this one count of a domestic violence charge. It's a misdemeanor charge, I believe. What happens next? What happens now? Concerning that legal process even.
Sure. There'll be a hearing. I'll go to the hearing. I'll say the same things that I shared when I was arrested, and the judge will determine what's next. This is not the first time, I will tell you, that Stafford County has been aware of or involved in issues surrounding my relationships. My husband and I have had some problems, right? And I'm not going to go into detail about that, but there's been a lot of problems in the past. It's hard. It's hard to deal with these things. And I think that someone like me, in a position I'm in, anyone in leadership. I see it. It's not just a thought. I see it. There are other people in political office. There are other people in churches in leadership that don't get the help that they need to deal with their relationship issues, their traumas, all kinds of mental health issues. And so I hope that this can be something that, a real leader should stand up, right? And I believe I'm a real leader, and I want to do the right thing, and I want to help people. And so a real leader should stand up and say, we can give people access to all the services until we're blue in the face, but a lot of people will not seek out that help because of the stigma surrounding it and because of the pedestal that you're put on when you're in a leadership position. And you almost feel like you have to save face all the time because everyone's looking at you all the time, and it's very difficult. But we don't have to do that, and actually creates a really unhealthy person, an unhealthy environment in our personal lives to not deal with the things that we should be dealing with. So I sort of tangented on that for you, but the legal process is next. We'll go to the hearing. I'll say the same thing. I don't anticipate it will be much different than what I heard when I spoke to the magistrate, which was, I don't really see any guilt here. You can go home, peaceful order. And that's all that happened.
And to be clear, was there any physical violence?
No, there was not.
How did you get to this point?
How did I get to this point as far as what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, the unprocessed issues that I have. I noted some of them, the things that I've seen in previous relationships and living conditions. And, I think that that's really all it is. It's just, I didn't go get help. I should have, to be fair, I tried, okay? I would talk to a counselor here and there and try to make something work. It is difficult in this area. We have somewhat of a healthcare desert. So finding the right care is very challenging to begin with. But then the busyness on top of it, it was just too easy to lean into. I'm doing all these great things and I feel good about it. And because you feel good, you can start thinking that you are good. And I used to think about that when I would pray, and because I'm a very prayerful person, right? I love the Lord and I'm leaning on Him a lot right now. But I would think about that when I would pray and be like, Lord, and I would ask that, don't just help me to feel better. I want to be better. I want to sit here with my face on the floor if I have to, as long as it takes for you to change something in me and to help me to be better, to be more like you. I saw a video recently. There was someone in ministry talking about refining silver. And when you refine silver, there's a process. You have to have the silver in the center of the fire. It can't be just near it. It has to be right in the middle, right? It's that hot place where all the stuff comes out and it can be purified. And the person said, they asked the silversmith, how do you know when it's done? How do you know when it's purified and when it's done? And they said, when you see your reflection in it, right? And I thought, oh man, I want to be that reflection. I want people to see Christ in me, And that doesn't mean I'm perfect. And they look at me and they see, oh, you're perfect like Jesus. They see you're humble and He's working in you. They see you're willing to continue to submit no matter what. And integrity is not just what people do when no one's watching. I've found out through this, integrity is what you do when everyone is watching and you're worried about what they think. What are you going to do? Are you going to tell the truth? Are you going to do the right thing? Are you going to be humble and say, you know what, I need some help? That's what I want. That's what I want to be, and that's how I want to interact. And
so for people watching at home or listening on their various platforms, you are married and you all have 7 children.
Yes, that's correct.
What do you tell your children about this incident? Because this obviously is something that you're going to have to unpack.
Yeah, absolutely. My children, I believe, know, they've lived with us, so they understand that there's been some complexities and issues for many years. My children understand that my husband and I are committed to finding the best way to keep peace in our family and keep our family together he and I have had some very hard conversations about what that looks like going forward. And right now, it looks very different. We're in a process of mourning what we did have that we were trying to make work in a way that was not working, and a lot of tension and a lot of unresolved trauma. And so he's responsible for himself. I'm responsible for myself. I have a good therapist now that I'm working with. And talking to my children about it, it's really on their terms. My children are older in the house. I have two 16-year-olds, one 15-year-old. My youngest is 11. She's easy, right? My 11-year-old, my 15-year-old, they go the very next day, we're praying for you. We sat in the room and we prayed for you. And I'm like, that is a win as a mom. That is a win. Like, that's how my children responded, was they went to the Lord, I couldn't ask for anything better. And so my job is to be responsible and accountable. And I went to them and I had apologized, which I believe in, that we need to do as parents, as leaders in any capacity, but especially as parents, and be able to stand up and say, you know what, this thing is not healthy. It should not be normal. It's not okay. I am sorry. And following up with action to make sure that those things don't continue. But to hear that response was really beautiful. My older kids, they have to figure it out on their time, and I have to let them lead that. They're turning into young women, so they get to have a say, and right now it's just sort of very gentle touch and go. When you're ready, we can talk kind of thing. And I think that's appropriate and healthy for them. So I'm really letting them lead the way on that.
Let me ask you, because people are going to watch this and
Sure.
they're going to form their own opinions and their own thoughts, and I don't want to make light of this situation. Obviously, October is Domestic Violence Month, and there are so many victims out there, and some people are very, very afraid of coming forward. And now you being in your situation, and even in your position, if you could go back and do it differently, would you? Because I guess you were charged. I don't believe your husband was. What is it that you said unresolved trauma, you feel led to this, and now you're in therapy and you're getting that help, and you said it was hard to find that help. What is it that you're learning about yourself even that led to this?
It's very early to unpack some of that, but one of the things that I learned, and this was prior to my therapy appointment I had just recently this week, but it was actually being in the Word and studying, and I was trying to understand why, and my husband had brought this up to me many times, trying to understand why I had compassion. I'm a compassionate person. I love people. I do. And I think anyone that knows me would, be able to attest to that and say that. I will run to the aid of people, and I love them. And I was trying to understand, why am I able to do this so easily and be who I really am in the Lord? Because that's who we really are, right? Who I am in Him is who I really am. It's not all of this, right? These are things I have to sort out and put before Him and put before a professional to grow. But why am I like that out in the world? And why am I struggling to be that in my home with my husband? And what I really began to understand prayerfully and being in the Word was, I had this bitterness about things that he and I had gone through. Again, not to get into detail, but my husband has not always been great to me. There's been some bad things. It's difficult because he's made a lot of progress, and now I'm the one where I'm like, well, what do I do with all of this?
And by this, you mean the resentment? The
resentment, yeah. And trying to understand that bitterness, and really just studying and praying, I came to understand, I can't force myself to do it, but it's a surrender, right? I need to give that to the Lord, and what that looks like is, Lord, help me understand, why am I different here from here? And then I understand there's the bitterness, and I understand it's preventing me from being like Him. And Scripture says to be merciful and compassionate like God. And that's a big ask, and I can't do it without Him. And I wasn't really relying on Him for that. I would rely on Him for, we do this. We take our thing, right? What's the thing that we aren't ready to deal with? We don't want to for whatever reason. There's a psychological block or whatever it is. For me, I do have complex PTSD. There's literally something in my brain that is like, you cannot do this. Okay. And then a lot of us deal with that. But we take that thing and we tuck it away and we're like, okay, God, whatever you want in this arena of what I'm giving you. And it's very easy to withhold things because it feels so painful to open, And so there being so much pain in opening those things, that's now why I'm really being intentional about having the therapy that I need so I can talk through those issues and the things that have happened to me over the years. And in a way that is healthy and responsible and not going to harm my family and will only grow me to be healthier. As a Christian and as a leader and as a mother, and I want that desperately. And when I want something, I go get it. So
you've talked a little bit about, your role as a wife and as a mother and the conversation that you had with your children. Mm-hmm. For people who are watching who may not be as familiar with your journey, you're also on the board of supervisors in Stafford County, yes. Correct? What is the message you have for your colleagues and for the community?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the message is I'm living this out loud, and I think that we have to be able to have these conversations. Like I said, there's so many people, I could list you right now, I won't, of other politicians that are dealing with relationship issues. And I don't know any details of domestic violence, but I know that that's wrapped up in a lot of those things. There's infidelity, there's a lot of difficult stuff that people are dealing with, and they're not able to get right, whatever that looks like for them, whether it's religious, reconnecting or therapy, hopefully that. There's a lot of stuff that people deal with. I just want to stand up and be an example and be like, you know what, I'm just going to lead the way and be transparent with what I'm going through. And that's for anyone in my community. We have a large military population. You know what people come back with from war. You know what they come back with from the trainings they go through sometimes. I'm aware of, the conversations that go on in the private Facebook groups for Christian mothers and, military spouses. I'm not unique, but neither are you. Neither are you. You're not unique, which means you're also not alone. You're not alone. There is help. You can reach out. The stigma is way more scary than what could happen in your life if you don't deal with it until you face the stigma. Mm-hmm. And then you go, oh, you know what? We're all struggling. Mm-hmm. We're all struggling. If we all put our stuff out on the table, I mean, come on. Mm-hmm.
So you brought up a good point. If we all put our stuff out on the table, we all have something to unpack.
We do.
So I guess, let's talk about that. You put your stuff out on the table. Why are you so transparent? Why are you so willing to kind of put everything out on the table and talk about this? Why was it important for you to agree to discuss this? Because this is super private. This is the stuff that goes on behind closed doors that people often don't want to talk about.
Which is why it doesn't get dealt with. Mm-hmm. And that's why I want to talk about it. And I've committed in my life, even with all of the things I've gone through over the years, I've committed in my life that whatever happens to me, whatever happens in my life, I'm going to take every little bit and I'm going to use it to glorify the Lord, because that is the goal of my life in this world. I want to get to heaven and be like, you know what? I used every single thing that you gave me, and I used every single thing that the enemy gave me too. Here's what I got. Here's what I did. So that's why the transparency. I'm going to give a little bit more here. And it's very personal. It's a difficult thing, but I want to share this as an example. When I ran for office the first time for supervisor, there was at least some emotional infidelity on my husband's part. I found out what was going on. And I actually had written the prayer journal for women in the clubs. Mm-hmm. I found out who this young lady was, and she went to my gym. And I approached her after a lot of prayer, because I said, I need to be really mindful going into this. And I approached her, and I said, I don't really want to see you here anymore. I know there's another gym you can go to that's closer to your house. That would be my preference. She said, I feel like you're threatening me. I said, no, I'm not. And I literally got on my knees. And I could not do this if it wasn't, something I dealt with the Lord previously. And I had given her this book because I knew that she had an industry connection, right? The prayer journal for the women in the clubs. I had given it to her previously before I found out about the infidelity. And I got on my knees and I hugged her and I said, you are not anyone's number two. She is married. I believe she's gone on and healed in her marriage. That's what I want. I am not letting the devil get a foothold in anything. He can try. Mm-hmm. All of it. Mm-hmm. All of it is the Lord's. He is sovereign. Every single thing that happens in this world, even if it wasn't by his hand, it went through his hands, and he's sovereign, and he can do something with it. And I get to be a partner in that. Mm-hmm. And because I'm in the public eye, what a beautiful opportunity, because this is not about me. I'm going to be gone one day. My picture will be on the wall in the Board of Supervisors, and everyone will forget. And it won't matter, but you know what will matter? The lives that I affect and show people the goodness of the Lord, what he can do in the process of living out my life here. So short in this world. It's so short. I don't know if I'm going tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going when I'm 120. That's my plan, but I'm going to use all of it.
What's the hardest part about navigating all of this, especially as a woman of faith? At some point after, the adult entertainment industry, you encountered God and became a pastor and an author and an elected leader, a politician. I want you to put on your pastor hat. I don't know that you ever take it off.
I'd say more minister now. I'm not actually pastoring a church, but I still do ministry.
What's the hardest part about navigating all of this while still being a woman of faith?
I think it's the hardest part for any of us. It's our pride. It's wanting to look at ourselves and be like, I'm going to walk in all of this that I'm called to. I'm going to function, in this capacity, this high capacity. And for me, that's public office. For me, that's ministry. For someone else, it's, leading the moms group, whatever the thing is. We're all functioning in something, and we're at capacity at times, and we're stretched thin, and we're doing the best that we can. And in that, we have to continue to do that and have faith that God is working it out and doing what he will through our lives while we're faithful in that. But at the same time saying, I'm not the answer. I'm not the be all end all. I don't have it all together. And that's what allows us to continue to point to him. Because I could stand up and I could try and cover down, and we see it all the time, especially in politics, and people just cover. I'm so great. Look at me. I'm the leader. You should follow me. People don't want that. That's not real. That's not transparency. That's not honest. It's definitely not glorifying to the Lord. So that has to be the thing. My relationship with him, my understanding of who I am to him, my understanding of myself as a daughter of God, and all these people around me who are children of God and deserving of love and kindness and grace. That has to be the one thing that drives everything. And so standing in his presence, having that prayer life, having that time in scripture and the word allows me to see myself for who I am and the flaws that I have, but not be condemned for it. To have grace, to say, oh, he forgives me. It's okay. It's all nailed to the cross. I can heal.
So now you're talking to a therapist, you're getting some mental health help. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously a part of your message. Yeah. You said that you feel like there's a stigma when it comes to elected officials, public leaders getting mental health help. Why so? And do you feel like, there may be some people watching this, again, you're facing a charge. Sure. That's a serious charge. It's a domestic violence charge. What do you say to people who are critical and, rightfully so, and say, now you're facing this charge and now you're seeking help? Why was this not sought before it escalated to this level?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that when you go through what I went through, and I just noted on the infidelity piece, that happened, I found out right before I took office. I mean, so, if you can imagine, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to throw myself into work now. I'm going to do some good stuff. I'll deal with that later. That's not uncommon, right? what I've found a few things happened when this all came out, and then I made my video talking about some of my things that I've gone through. A few things happened. A lot of people reach out to me and said, "Me too," as you would expect. A lot of people reach out to me and they said, "Keep going, be encouraged. You're very good at what you do." I've had follow-up invitations from things where I was like, I don't know, this thing's coming up and all this controversy. And they're like, no, we want you here. You're good at what you do. Continue to do your job. And that's what people want from me. So that's what I'm going to continue to do. But another thing that I saw is that a lot of the people who are being critical and saying negative things and unkind things, they're all politically motivated. They didn't like me to begin with. I could adopt an entire orphanage, okay, and they wouldn't like me. And so it's really important to understand that, as I go through this, that, okay, you don't like me, but this handful of people, I'm not going to speak to party or anything like that or anyone's names, but you're the same people who elected a felon as your delegate. So I think that a lot of this is political and it's circus. And I have to keep that in mind, not to minimize what's going on, but so that I can be right-sized in the presence of my God and act according to what he wants me to do and not be swayed by people who have other motivations to harm me. Because I won't, and I won't cave to that.
Everyone who comes on The Good Word, we always ask them this question. I don't know if we did this when you came on, because you were one of our very early guests. However, if you could share with us, at this point in your journey, what would you say is the good word?
I really should have thought about this ahead of time. I knew you were going to ask me that. I really think it's just grace. It's grace and perseverance. Even with all of this, I love my husband and my husband loves me. That's not enough. Sometimes you have to get help. So I think focusing on there is always grace available, but there's also help available outside of religious things, right? And then they do tie in. God created our minds. That's the word. God created our minds and he knows them very well. And he has gifted people in this world to understand them even better and help us to walk through these things so that we can continue to heal and honor him best in our lives, in our relationships, in our professions. And so I think that's it. Always go to the Lord. He knows us well, and he loves us despite everything that's in that nooks and crannies of your brain. There's a lot of stuff in there, guys. I know. We all got some stuff, and it's not pretty, but he still loves you. He still loves you.
Monica Gary, former adult dancer turned pastor turned politician, addressing some pretty, heavy topics with us here on The Good Word. We appreciate it. We appreciate your transparency, your vulnerability, and also your candidness addressing this domestic violence charge, and also how you're planning to move forward and getting the help that you need.
Thank you so much for having me, Tisha.
Thank you for chatting with us.
Of course.